So let's start adding hatches and gradients to our drawing, and we will start with the simple hatch pattern. So here we have a simple drawing, and in this case we have this drawing divided into many different parts using the geometries, and we will apply different patterns of hatches on different areas. So I'll start with the hatch tool here on the draw panel. So click on this hatch tool and that will open this hatch creation tab. So this tab will remain active as long as the command is active, and here we have all the options which are related to hatch. So let's start with the first option, which is pick points. So select this pick point, click on it once, and the cursor will change into this point selection cursor. By default also the cursor will look like this point selection cursor, but if your cursor is different, if it is like this, the pick box type, then click on this pick points to change it to this point selection cursor. Now let's move to the drawing area, and when you'll move, you'll notice that whenever the cursor finds an island, the hatch pattern will be applied there. So as I moved my cursor here, the complete area got highlighted and the hatch will be applied here. Now let's move my cursor, I'll move it to this area, and now the hatch will be applied here. So you can see that the hatch pattern will change depending upon the area where I am clicking. So in this case, the hatch pattern will be applied here, and you can see the preview here. So let's now select this area for applying our hatch. Okay, so now our pattern is applied and the default pattern of NC31 is here. Obviously this is not looking like this NC31 pattern because the scale is not correct, which will change. But first we need to look into other patterns also. So we currently see this solid angle NC31 and NC32 patterns, but there are a lot more patterns available in this hatch tool. So let's click on this small arrow right beside this pattern panel, and it will show all the remaining patterns which are available here. So you can select any of these patterns from this list, and you can even create your own pattern if you want. So I'll select this gravel pattern for this case, and even when I change my pattern to gravel, still it's looking like a solid pattern. Obviously we'll take care of this also. So let's first move to the next option here. So here on the properties panel, we can change all of the properties which are related to the current hatch. And the first property that we need to change is the scale. Obviously the scale is not correct. That's why we are seeing this as a solid hatch. So here we have the scale option, which is set to 1. Now let's change the scale value to 100 and press enter or tab key. And now the hatch pattern is visible. So we need to change scale to even higher value. So let's change it to 200, press enter, and now this looks appropriate. So I'll keep this scale. So now the scale has been applied. Let's look at the other options here. So obviously we have applied the pattern. You can select what we want to apply. For example, either solid, the gradient, which we'll learn in a moment, and also the pattern. Obviously we have some user defined patterns also, and if you have defined, you can select that as well, but that we are not going to select for now. Now here in this drop down, we have an option of changing hatch color. So currently by layer is selected, so that simply means the color of layer will be applied to the hatch, but you can select any of these colors, and obviously you can go to more colors if you want to select from any of these tabs. So obviously we don't need to change the color as of now. And here we have the background color for our hatch. So if you want to change the background color for your hatch, you can select this option here. So obviously in this way you can select the background color. So we are not going to change that also. Now we have the option of hatch transparency, which is set to 0. So obviously in this case also you can change this transparency value from 0 to 90, 90 being the highest value, and that will make your hatch pattern a little bit dim. So you can move this transparency slider towards right, and as you can see that the transparency is changing and it's making our hatch pattern more dim, and you can move it here to keep the default value. Also we have an angle here which is set to 0, so you can change this value, and this angle will rotate the pattern, the current pattern of your hatch. So you can change that value. For example, let's enter 45, press enter, and you can see there is a rotation in the pattern of these hatches. Although it won't be apparent or very much visible in this gravel pattern, it will be very much visible with other straight line pattern. So that also will look. For now I'll change this value back to 0. Okay, so now we have changed these properties. Let's expand this properties panel and look at one more option here. Now here we have an layer assignment. So currently you can see that the hatch pattern is assigned to this line layer. So if you want to assign it to any other layer, you can select it from here. For example, I'll select this hatch layer, which is already made for these hatches. So now only these hatch patterns will be assigned on that hatch layer, and obviously we'll learn about layer in the next module. So once these settings are done, simply click on close hatch creation. And here we have our final hatch. Now that's not the only way of making hatches, and there are also other ways of making it. So I'll simply select this hatch pattern and I'll delete it. Now let's go to this hatch tool again. And once again, we'll select some areas. So first I'll select this area, and then I'll select this area, this one, and this one. So in all of these areas, we need to change the pattern. So obviously this gravel pattern is not required here. So I'll click on this arrow to expand this list of hatches, and I'll select the NC31 pattern. So that's the pattern which is applied here. Now, if you want to add more areas, you can obviously select it by simply selecting the island here, or you can also select this option, the select option, and that will allow you to select the boundaries. So now you'll see that your cursor changed into a pick box, and you can simply click on the boundaries now, and that area will be selected for your hatch. You can simply repeat the process for this side as well, and here it is. So these are two different ways of selecting hatches, either with a pick point or with the pick box. Obviously, if you need to remove some of the boundaries, you can select this remove option, click on the boundaries to remove the hatch patterns. So here we have it. So now we'll apply this hatch pattern, and we'll change the angle also. So in this case, you can see that the angle is 45 degrees, but that will be the default angle of hatch. Now let's move on to this angle option, which is set to 0. So now you can change this angle, and when you'll change this angle, so let's now change it to 45 and press enter. You'll notice that the lines will become completely vertical. So in this case, the angle measurement will start from the current angle of your hatch. Initially, the hatch was inclined at an angle of 45 degrees. So changing its angle to 45 degree will add 45 degrees more. So that will become a 90-degree angle with respect to the positive side of x-axis. That's why we have this vertical angle here. So I'll change it back to 0. And we have many other options here, like the origin, associative hatch, and there are some other options in this options panel. So that will look in upcoming videos. For now, I'll simply uncheck this associative option, and I'll not change any of these properties, and simply I'll select this close hatch creation. And here we have it. The hatches are now applied. So in this way, you can create simple hatches in AutoCAD.